Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
So let me start with the good news. Since 2015, the city has added about 40,000 jobs. Our friends at Brookings have calculated that since 2011, you've added about 50,000 new residents in the prime working ages of 25 to 39. So you have population growth going up, job growth going up after years of struggling to get that kind of gain. What's allowed this kind of turnaround?
Well, I think one of the best things about Philadelphia is it's affordable compared to cities like Boston, New York, Washington, D.C. A lot of our young people coming out of college now are saddled with such debt that it's hard to afford an apartment or a house, and the cost of living here is low compared to those cities. We have great culture, great entertainment, great restaurants. It's a solid, good, fun city, and young people like to live here. The problem we have, though, is that when those young people get a little bit older and they start talking about having a family, they start calculating where they're going to move in the suburbs to have a good school district for their kids. Yeah. And then we have the other cohort of people who are just mired in poverty, who can't move, who are stuck with the educational choices that they have. And that's why our investments in education are paramount to what we need to do to change the gap between the haves and the have-nots, and to also address a lot of our other problems that are, I call the misery things that we spend money on we shouldn't: incarceration, addiction, family dysfunction, those kinds of crime, policing, prosecution. Those kinds of things would dissipate if we could get a solid educational foundation for our young people, both families and families who are stuck in poverty, and raise everyone up and expand the tax base. And that's a long-term process.
Maybe that's a little bit of the answer to the second question I had, because while you do have job growth, again, that's the good news. The bad news is that you're only in the middle. When Brookings, again, our friends at Brookings calculated job growth in the 100 largest metros, you rank 54th, just kind of right in there. At this point, what is the biggest barrier at a time when many cities are growing rapidly to more accelerated job growth in Philadelphia?
Poverty. I think our tax structure is not perfect, but it is it's declining. Wage taxes and business taxes have been declining since 1998. The problem again is that if you look at the suburbs and the school districts in the suburbs that have great products, turn out great, educated kids, they pay for it through real estate taxes. Here, our real estate taxes aren't as high as the suburbs, but no one wants to pay real estate taxes. And the state. Look, Governor Wolf has done his absolute best to put back all the cuts that the Corbett administration did back in the bad old days when we were losing counselors and teachers and vice principals and all kinds of folks, and increasing class size and those kinds of things. So he's gotten it back to where it was. The problem is that people in this city, state, and country need to make a decision whether or not investing in education makes sense, and it makes all the sense in the world. Even China, they built 100,000 seat STEM universities for free. I just saw an editorial in the paper today that chastising the legislature for not providing enough support for higher education. We were one of the highest state education systems in the country. That's not good for the state. And I think education is really the only way out. And we had to do things like pass a beverage tax in order to get revenue to pay for pre-K and to pay for our infrastructure rebuild. If you're a 10-year-old little boy or girl living in the city, and you're living in a struggling neighborhood, and your school's struggling, and the facility you go to school in every day is struggling, and you get out of school in the afternoon, and you go to the recreation center or the library to get access to computers, or to get after-school help, or just to be in a safe place, and your ceiling's falling in your rec center or your library, the rain's coming in the window, they got to cover the books with plastic, the heat doesn't work, there's no air conditioning. At some point in time, you're going to feel that no one really cares about you, and there's no equity in your life, and you turn cold, and you're not fulfilled, you're not meeting your potential, and we have to make those investments, or we're going to continue to spin our wheels on the treadmill.
We'll come back to the beverage tax in a second. You recently put out your 1,000-day report, which means you're now past John F. Kennedy, right? You're like, just more than 1,000 days.
Honestly, I had a pitched argument with my staff, my comm staff. I don't really want to do this because all it's going to do is give the press, even if you did well in a certain area, they didn't follow through with this portion of it. It turned out okay. I held my breath.
In that report, blemishes notwithstanding, you grapple directly, I think, you talk about explicitly an issue that really is front and center in every city now that cities are growing again, you have many cities asking the question, and here's what you wrote. The administration's economic focus has been on expanding the gains seen in center city to neighborhoods citywide. Right. What does it take to do that?
It takes support for immigrant businesses and immigrants, and continue to make city a welcoming city. Most of the new businesses started in the city have been started by immigrant folks. But when we have a president and a government that is constantly badgering, beating down, separating families, having us try to become ICE agents and round people up and identify them and point them out, it chills that ability for us to do that, for them to feel comfortable as part of the fabric of the city. We fought the federal government's federal court and won. The opinion issued by Judge Bailson, who was a former U.S. attorney, who's not soft on crime, who basically said, "Go guys, go get a warrant." And they'll turn them over. But they want us to go extracurricular outside of the Constitution, and we're not going to do that. And I think if we can continue to maintain this environment that you're safe here, that we are valued here, that we want you here, they will continue to expand businesses. And the other issue is that we need to get some of the kids who are living in poverty need to have access to tech. They're not going to become coal miners, no matter what Trump says. I mean, it's not the industry that's coming back. It's everything in the next 30, 40 years is going to be tech. And if our kids don't have a facility with tech, they're going to be lost and left behind.
And what's the key to getting that?
Key to getting tech is to continue to work with our community. Well, we have to start at birth. I mean, you ever watch?
Because you just held a conference on this, right? On inclusive tech.
Well, I went to South by Southwest 3 years ago, and it was a very interesting and fun event, but it wasn't diverse. The diversity there was just basically non-existent. And we thought that we should maybe start something in Philadelphia that was kind of directed at people of color who don't always have access to that kind of tech. We called it the North Star Conference. Frederick Douglass's newspaper was North Star and physical freedom and now economic freedom. And it went over really well, and we have a really good buzz on the event across the country, and we want to continue to make it an annual event. And having that ability to network and to talk to people who have started businesses and tech businesses, giving you advice on what to do, making connections, it's what business is all about. And
you talked about the importance of immigrant startup businesses in expanding prosperity to more neighborhoods. Talk a little bit about your view about the relative importance of building your own local small business versus attracting national business as a means of generating growth.
We have to do both. But when I was growing up in South Philly, there was a street called 7th Street. It was 7th Street between Porter Street and McKean Street. It was mostly Jewish merchants that sold everything: shoes, food, clothing. I mean, my mother went and bought everything we ever owned on 7th Street. Those folks got older and passed on, and their kids didn't want to run the stores anymore. And they were professionals. They moved out of the city, and the place went right downhill. The property values around that strip went downhill. And so if we can, and now what we see is Cambodian, Vietnamese, Laotian folks starting businesses and building that street back up again on the next iteration of the next wave of immigrants. And then the property values around that street are starting to rise again, and younger people are moving in. And we have 20 or so business strips in the city that really could be that anchor for not only for employment and for commerce and retail and restaurant, but for the increased values of the properties around that street.
The city and I think you personally, you've been a big player in the Amazon HQ2 effort. Until the last round of market turbulence, Amazon's market capitalization was over $1 trillion. Right. Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world. Do you feel resentful at all that cities are being put in the position of being asked to provide tax incentives to bring this kind of employer at the point when Amazon is thriving to that extent?
No.
Do you feel resentful about being put in that position?
I don't feel resentful towards Amazon at all. They haven't made their decision yet.
Right.
So,
but why?
I think they're wonderful. I mean, actually, it's the best website. It is the best website going. Click, click, done.
But the question is,
the screen doesn't empty, and you have to fill it back up again. It's a great site.
I guess I can tell from the applause. There are a lot of people asking. I mean, and look, Philadelphia is not unique in this question. There are cities everywhere asking, look, we have after-school centers where the rain is coming in and people are putting plastic over the books, as you said 5 minutes ago. And then you have the richest man and second highest valued company in the world. How can it make sense to give them taxpayer dollars rather than the kid trying to keep his books dry?
Because it's 50,000 jobs over an 8 to 10 year period, and that's a base of employment that can really put us over the top when it comes to reaching our potential as a city.
What would it mean for the city if you had it?
What would it mean for the city? It would mean that we beat everybody else, which would be nice. It was like the Super Bowl. It was like, yes, finally we won something. It would mean we have, like, again, one of the largest tech and companies in the world in Comcast. So we have a really good base of great corporate leadership that invests in the city. The second tower's, getting done. Hopefully there'll be a third tower. So we have a good solid base. So I think that Amazon coming here in conjunction with that kind of heft, I think really does drive us forward.
Kind of a critical mass.
Yes.
that has. I mean, what they argue is that it's not only the 50,000 jobs. It would create kind of an ecosystem around it that would be a multiplier.
And it also creates a draw for people to want to come here and want to come here and live here and pay taxes here and raise their families here.
Will at any point would the people of Philadelphia know what kind of incentives you've offered?
Yeah, the problem.
I understand you can't do it during the.
I know we're government. And we're not private business, but it is proprietary because if we put it all out there, the press, as is their job, would pick it apart like
after the fact,
like a turkey at Thanksgiving.
After the fact,
and we would after the fact for sure. Yeah, okay. Yeah. But the point is that you're kind of Comcast, Amazon was very clear in they didn't want this having a big public discussion, and that's you could argue that's wrong. I mean, you could argue it's not transparent and it's wrong, but it is what the guidelines that they set. So we're kind of stuck. Having to go that way.
We're here to talk about strategies for inclusive growth, and I want to ask you, thinking about it in those terms, where have local business and local philanthropy stepped up the most to be a partner in what you're trying to do, and where do you wish they would do more?
Well, I think the William Penn Foundation has been phenomenal for us. I mean, they are in every segment of what we do, from sustainability to water cleanliness to infrastructure development. I mean, just parks development, parks, everything. They've been our go-to philanthropy for a long time, including Knight and all the others that are MacArthur on our criminal justice stuff. And they all work together really well, like Knight and Penn. They're not not competing with each other. They kind of have a synthesis together that makes it easier for us to deal with that.
And do they just provide more, kind of additional dollars, or are the things that philanthropies can fund or do that government would find it difficult to do?
Both philanthropies desire us to put our money up too, and we're willing to do that. For example, on Rebuild, I mean, they gave us $100 million. That's
Rebuild is your
Rebuild is
your program.
We have 160. So don't hold me to the numbers. I'm not. I mean, 160 so recreation centers, libraries, public facilities that people use. They're all. Some of them are 100 years old. I mean, and they have not seen major renovations or replacement in that period of time. So they're all kind of crappy facilities. Some of them were built later, so they're in better shape. But the worst ones seem to be in our poor neighborhoods. So that kind of investment really does make a difference in the infrastructure of the community. And what we've tried to do is we've tried to concentrate on facilities where there's a public school, and across the street is a library, and a block away is a rec center or a park, so that we can have kind of like a campus. So we're investing city money in school district money in the school district building, city and philanthropic money into the other facilities to create an environment that makes those facilities the center of the neighborhood. Because that's what you go to a library any time of the day, it's packed. I mean, people are in there applying for jobs. I mean, kids go there after school to be safe and to do homework, and they are the centers of the community, and we have to treat them that way.
You mentioned the infrastructure effort. The other big use of the beverage tax was the pre-K, the pre-K expansion. Why did you decide to put so many chips down there? Why did you decide that was the place to put the dollars?
Because and this is how I learned we were right. Not this September, the September before, I went to the opening day of a kindergarten, which is like 23, 25 kids. First day, it's like meltdown day. Kids they're holding on to their mother's ankles. Moms are in the neck. And I looked, and there's 5 kids sitting at the desk like this. Books in order, pencil here, ready to go. And as the class got over, I said, how many of you guys went to pre-K? Those 5 kids raised their hand. They walked in that door ready to go. And if they're not reading by grade level by 3rd or 4th grade, by 7th and 8th grade, they're not reading hardly at all. They're embarrassed. They start acting up and acting out, and by 9th and 10th grade, they're gone, and they go to the corner, and we wind up having to deal with the.
So you've got about 2,000 kids in your pre-K now.
No, we have. It's like 2,700.
And the goal is to get to 5,000 by 2023.
Correct. And we would be further along if extremely wealthy people who own beverage companies didn't sue us. I mean, it's like. And what was worse was when they sued us, and what we said was we're going to start the programs, but we're not going to spend all the money because if we lose, then we got to go back in the general fund and pay them back. So we're going to move ourselves along, and we wound up winning the case after a year and a half, 2 years. But they use that to beat us up on we're collecting the tax, but we're not using what we said we're using it for. Yeah. Well, I can't because if you stop suing us, we will. Yeah. It's like what?
I want to bring in the audience in a minute, but is the biggest inhibitor on how fast you can grow the amount of money you have, or the number of quality providers, or both? I mean, what limits?
But look, both. But and any time we get compared to New York, I say stop.
Yeah.
Just stop. There is no comparison. They got a lot of money. I mean, they got 50,000 kids in pre-K, 40,000 police. I mean, it's a big deal. And their Highline. I love our Highline. I love our Reading Viaduct. But you ever walk on that thing? I mean, it goes on forever. And that's so it's not a really good comparison. Our comparisons are Baltimore, Chicago, Boston to a degree, but they're even different than we are. It's hard to compare.
You get to this a larger point I was going to ask you about later, but because you touch on it, which is you have a lot of different initiatives going. You've expanded pre-K, you're doing the infrastructure, you set a goal of reducing carbon emissions from the city by 80% by 2050. How far can cities go in driving their own agenda? Are there sufficient resources at the municipal level, or do you need more of a partnership than you now have from state and especially the federal government to get these things up to scale?
Cities have to go as far as they can, and there's no other option. I mean, Superman is not flying in to save, or Superwoman is not flying in to save us from our issues. I mean, I have the Department of Homeland Security chasing around immigrants, right? Who are only thing that they've done wrong is they're undocumented, and they're chasing them around all day. They're not interdicting the heroin. They're not interdicting the guns. Like, could you work on that? I mean, we had 1,200 people who died of drug overdose last year, and it falls on us pretty much alone to deal with that issue. So we've declared a health emergency. We've mobilized all of the departments that touch the issue, and we're trying to keep people from dying. And then we have the other issue where the supervised injection sites, where people can go in. Look, it's an ugly situation, but they go in and use drugs, but they're there with somebody, medical people who can revive them, who can get them into housing, who can get them into drug treatment, and you have the federal government saying we're going to come arrest everybody.
Let's bring the audience, but can I ask you real quick, is there anything the Trump administration is doing that is making your life easier?
No.
Nothing?
No. Like what?
Yeah, I'm asking.
No, I can't think of anything.
Would you consider this?
It cost us $300,000 the other day. A guy coming into to an event where he showed up, and we had to spend money to take care of him.
Is it an anti-urban administration, anti-city?
I even go further. I think they're people who follow him are concerned about the change of complexion in this country, and it's a natural progression. It's a natural evolution. I think it's wonderful. I think its diversity is fabulous. And this "Make America Great Again," we're taking back our country. All that flag stuff and the kneeling and all. They're all dog whistles to people who are white, who don't want to see people of color become the majority. It's going to happen. And I'm Irish, so we weren't exactly welcomed here. You know what I mean? We were a plot by the Pope that make America Catholic. I mean, does that have a resonance with Muslims? What they're saying about today and Sharia law and all that stuff? They said the same thing about us. And I try to explain to hyphenated Americans, to third, fourth generation, you were they. You were them. When we crawled off Coffin, we didn't go to Ellis Island. It was 1892. We came in the 1840s. We were all undocumented. We went to our ghettos. We tried to get jobs. We tried to survive. And they told us they burned 2 churches down in Philly.
All right, let's bring in the audience.
Hi.
Mayor Kenney, thank you for your efforts. I'm glad you get it. In building opportunity for all, I feel like education is the answer.
That's it.
And being in our area, we are blessed with Temple and Penn and all the, education, the colleges, the universities, and I feel like a partnership with them to get the children from the underserved areas where they're not getting educated, to bring them in the environment, like have centers in every university, have them, just feed into that and be exposed, giving the university some kind of credit and giving to the students who are educating and tutoring and giving STEM exposure some relief on their financial aid.
Yeah, I think the whole national financial aid discussion needs to happen. I mean, if you gave me $25 billion he wants to build a wall with and put it in education, I mean, I think we'd be doing our country a lot better service than building a wall. Our universities are involved. The Netter Center out of Penn does a great job. Our School of Social Work at Temple has been very helpful in embedding social work. We have a pilot program to embed 22 trauma-informed or trauma-specialized social workers directly into the school every day, so we can get ahead of some of these problems these kids are experiencing. Community college has been a great partner. I looked at what Jefferson University is doing with Cheney. That is a phenomenal partnership. I think that's going to be wonderful long term. We have to. The thing that frustrates me the most is when I go into these schools. I go at least once a week, and I see these kids. They have such phenomenal potential that we're going to lose. In that room somewhere is a Nobel Prize winner, is a mayor, is a doctor, is somebody who's going to find a discovery. And if we wind up losing them mentally or physically or actually, we're less off for it. So we do make those partnerships. The biggest thing I think we've done is taking back our district from the state, our school district, and merging city departments and the school district together so we can deal with public property issues, we can deal with sanitation issues, we can deal with health issues, we can deal with human service issues, and work together as opposed to being two separate siloed entities, because our kids are the most important resource we have.
You have another question for the mayor? All right, let me ask you, in the back there, yeah.
So if you are looking for systemic change in education and funding Philly public schools fairly, why won't you do two things? End tax abatements, which according to some financial reports would infuse the city with $300 million in new taxes, and make our largest employer, which I think used to be the University of Pennsylvania, become a real community citizen and pay pilots?
Well, first of all, the whole abatement issue is really misconstrued. If I ended the tax, we ended the tax abatement today. There's not one new dollar going into the school system for the foreseeable future. The question is, when you flip the coin, is the elimination of tax abatement going to slow or stop development at the level that it is now? Because you have to remember, the tax abatement's been in existence since the mid-1990s. There are hundreds of millions of dollars in formerly abated taxes that are now being paid into the city and the school district that may have never been built. Because we go through periods of time where it's very expensive and difficult to build. And unless you incentivize that, after that 10 years, you start getting a big number in taxes. So I don't know where that $300 million number came from, but I mean, I'm not going to have an argument with you about it now. The pilot issue is something that will be probably looked at in this budget cycle. The issue is that the universities believe, and in some degrees they're very accurate, that they contribute a lot in taxes to the body politic now, to the treasury now. I keep on asking them to please monetize that for us, so that people can see what it is you do and what the value of it is. But that discussion will probably go on again. City Council has to pass it. I couldn't impose that. Not that I would impose it, but I would leave the tax abatement alone. And what I think is going to happen is going to be kind of a hybrid type of, and I can live with that too.
Well, let me ask you real quick, if there's not another question from the audience. As I said before, I mean, every city, no matter how fast they are growing, is grappling with the same problem. Now they have growth again. How do you expand the circle of prosperity so that more neighborhoods and more kids and more families are participating in it? As you look around the country, is there any model, is there any city that is getting this right? And or what would you do next to try to, what's the next piece for you in your mind?
The next piece from a kind of balancing out the economics of the economy, we've reduced our prison population in the county by about 3,000. We'll be down, I think, 34, 36%. And we're continuing. We closed a prison, believe it or not. I mean, that's kind of, when I was running for office, that rap on me was, you're going to build a prison and fill it up. No, we emptied the prison and closed it. So, but it's taking that cohort of folks while they're there and while they're transitioning out, to have the skills, the soft skills, the social skills, the technical skills they need not to go back to jail. And that's really important for us. And we're trying to move people into Power Corps to learn construction skills. We're opening up the building trades to a larger degree than they've ever been before for people of color and women and people of color. We're trying to get people more involved in tech. We have a Coded by Kids. Sylvester Mobley is one of our big heroes in this whole thing. They're up at the prison teaching prisoners how to write code, so that they have a portfolio of work when they leave and can take and go on a job interview. It's continuing to look at all those practical. One of the things, marijuana legalization. So many people flunk out or don't get in because they have marijuana in their system. I mean, alcohol's not tested, and I've been an advocate for marijuana legalization in Pennsylvania, primarily because it's the right thing to do, and secondarily because Jersey's going to do it, and people will be driving over the bridge like they do now to buy their cheaper wine, and Delaware's going to do it. So I think we have to do it, and the ability to generate revenue that's non-tax, because they're never voting for taxes in Harrisburg. Grover Norquist, no taxes ever, and you'll have a new revenue generator for schools and infrastructure, and hopefully we can move on. The big thing is states got to have to raise the personal income tax at some point in time, probably after this election. That's the heft of money that we need to do all the things in the state we need to do.
Yeah. Mayor Kenney, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks.